and welcome to the Happy Progress Podcast. I'm Alex Harris, and today we're here with Dustin Reichmann. How you doing, Dustin?
I'm doing great, Alex. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for being here. To get started, does progress equal happiness to you?
I think progress is maybe the largest component of happiness. That's been my experience. So I think there's some other foundational things that you kind of need in life to really be happy as well. But on a day-to-day basis, yeah, I feel like progress towards things that are important to you is really the key to happiness.
Makes sense. Now, Dustin left an engineering career about 2 years ago and now runs an e-commerce site. So today we're going to talk a little bit about how you can prepare yourself for success, thinking about the future and not settling just for ultimately one profession, because my opinion, everybody should have a side hustle. Everybody should have a separate business banking account, because it really makes a big difference in the long run of how you could prepare for the future. So we're going to talk about his Better For You snack company, FireCreekSnacks.com, which has made over $1 million in revenue just since last year, I believe.
Yep.
Also, he cut his teeth while working in his engineering career as a side hustle in his company engagemarriage.com, where he's helping couples improve their marriage and their businesses, and YouTube channel. And then you also have I believe like an agency, Engage Digital Solutions as well, where you help small businesses increase sales and create systems to really grow their business. Take us a little bit through that journey of you being in your career and thinking about your path for success.
Yeah, absolutely. And I am passionate about the idea of having multiple streams of income, and that's something that's been really foundational for our family and setting us up for financial success. For you watching on the video, you may see kids running around the background. I have 3 kids and a wife of nearly 20 years. And so my family is really centered to my life. It sounds like I have a lot going on, and I do, but it allows me the flexibility to be here and to work from home and to enjoy my family. But yeah, my whole journey started on a more traditional route. I intended to just be a lifelong engineer. So I went to engineering school, got a master's, bachelor's and master's in civil engineering, and worked for 18 years in that industry for a couple different companies of different sizes. But ultimately, I was a partner in a mid-size, privately owned firm with a specialization doing transportation engineering, and was in management. Had a group of about 15 people under me, and was basically just burnt out. I kind of felt like I'd done all I wanted to do in that field. And that was in the end of 2017. So kind of as you alluded to, I quote unquote retired right at the beginning of 2018. So about 2.5 years ago at this point. And the thing that set me up to allow that was really side hustles and doing side businesses. So I was doing a lot of things while I was practicing as an engineer. The primary one being Engage Marriage that you mentioned, .com, which I'd done with my wife, although it was primarily me. And I started that in 2009, just the Google search on, we were on vacation. I had no intention really of making a real business, but I was reading and wanted a creative outlet. And I was kind of using my left brain all the time at work. And I was reading a book called No More Mondays by Dan Miller. And basically his whole thing was you need to be doing multiple things and exercising different parts of your mind. And I said, that's a really good idea. And my wife and I had been doing marriage preparation work through our church on a volunteer basis, working with young couples as they were preparing for marriage. And I thought, this very old school, we're always in like a church basement, and these guys want to have information online. 2009 was like the boom of blogging, so I was like, I'm going to make a blog, kind of like everyone did, it felt like at that time. And so it really consisted of just writing a lot, sharing our own experiences. We had been married 7 years at that point. So we had, had one child and had some life experience to share. And so it was really an outlet and a place to write and share those things. Then and I wrote a book, it's called 15-Minute Marriage Makeover. In the process of that, and kind of developed some frameworks that have been very helpful over the years for couples. And so that business and the topics have kind of matured as we have, so now our primary audience is married 15, 20 years, kind of like us. And that's, kind of the natural evolution of that brand. So that was 2009. So there's like 5 or 6 years I was just writing. I'm making a lot of great relationships online, learning a lot about how, online marketing works and SEO and things like that, and making a little bit of money. But I was doing other side hustles that were more immediate, I guess, as far as returns. I was, and all things that I kind of was scratching my own itch. Yeah. So one quick example of that, if you'd like me to share, would be after we had our first child, I really wanted more new golf clubs, but we were in debt and I didn't really want to spend the money for them. So what I did was, I went on eBay at the time and auction site and was just buying like, drivers, and I would buy 3 of them and then 10, I'm going to resell them back and I'll just break even. Well, I found that I could buy them, clean them up, write a little better copy, take better photos than the guy I bought them from, and I could sell them for more than I bought them for, So I started buying and selling golf clubs, and I live in the St. Louis region in Southern Illinois, and I basically started going on Craigslist. At the time, no one had gotten murdered from Craigslist that I was aware of, so I wasn't as maybe it wasn't as sketchy sounding as it might seem now. But I would people would be wanting to clear out their garage, and they would have name brand golf clubs, and I developed a sense for the value that I could get on eBay, and I basically started flipping golf clubs.
Right.
My young kid was helping me clean up, polished clubs, taking photos in our basement of all these clubs and reselling them, and was generating a nice, side income, about $1,500 a month. We got out of debt. It allowed that, along with engaged marriage and my day job, allowed my wife to stay home when we had our 3rd child, and she was home for 8 years. And so for me, it's always been kind of like lifestyle centered, but I feel like, because that's my why, but the mechanisms have been very varied. I've probably done 10 different side hustles. And really in 2015 was an inflection point for me. And that engaged marriage, I started really getting into digital marketing, taking a lot more training, and engaged marriage really took off. And that's when I started doing some marketing consulting with others. That was the other brand you mentioned, helping other online businesses. Eventually was helping some local businesses like my dentist and my real estate agent. Like, just people would ask me what I'm doing, and I would say, I do these things with marketing, and they'd ask if I could help them. And so that kind of all culminated in 2017, where I said, you know what, I'm ready to make this leap to become self-employed. And I didn't really have a clear picture exactly what my day-to-day would look like, but I knew kind of the last 6 months of 2017, I kind of had two full-time efforts, and I was able to save a bunch of money and basically have a confident leap away from engineering into entrepreneurship full-time. And I've done some different things since then, including Fire Creek, that we'll get into. But it's been the best 2.5 years of my life. It's very different than my 9-to-5 was, but I really love it.
Were you able to get rid of most of your debt before you made the leap?
I was, yeah. So we have a mortgage, but other than that, we were consumer debt free for 3 or 4 years beforehand. So that way, any extra savings, I was kind of prepping, I would say from 2016, maybe subconsciously, but I would started at that time talking about, what if I left my job? What would that look like?
Right.
But didn't get the confidence to really do it until the end of 2017.
Well, I see a common trend in entrepreneurs who really think big picture, and this is the growth show, and really you have to have that mindset, that growth mindset, to think where you're going to be in 5 years, where you're going to be in 10 years, and really to be able to reinvent yourself. And great entrepreneurs are resourceful and creative to kind of think differently, and also just kind of incorporate all the different aspects of business and side hustle into your life. So you got married, you had a kid, and you essentially created content and businesses based on those things.
Right.
And what I see a lot of entrepreneurs where they get stuck is like, oh, I have to create this entirely new thing. Just take what you're doing already and incorporate it into a business. I mean, honestly, if you sit home and play video games all day and that's your thing, you could probably create a business from it somehow. It may not make you retire, but you could get some extra pocket change to buy more video games or something. But being resourceful and kind of thinking out of the box is where entrepreneurs really thrive, because you will fail multiple times in multiple businesses until you figure out what's actually going to stick. But things that last long don't really take extra effort. So, if you think about creating content, incorporate that into your day and just create content along the way. And if you do have a career, you're kind of doing it, in between meetings or, after work or whatever it is. But you really start to focus on how you can make that side hustle pretty much just as big as your regular job, if not bigger, because you don't want to have to rely, especially in this economy now, we see with this pandemic, is that you cannot rely on your employer. You need to control your own destiny and really take it into your own hands. And I think you've done a great job on that. What kind of mindset do you think that the entrepreneurs really need in order to kind of break through that resistance and achieve those goals?
Yeah, I mean, I think first and foremost, it's an abundance mindset. I mean, I grew up very poor. My high school years, I lived in a trailer. My dad was an hourly laborer when he had work. My mom was a waitress when she had work, and so I think a lot of people coming from that environment would adopt a scarcity mindset. My parents still do. My dad's passed, but my mom still has a very scarce mindset. Just gets by on Social Security and will never get ahead. It's always someone else's issue. Somehow I took the opposite. So when I went to school, I wanted the safe, secure job with engineering and a good salary, and it was great, for that, especially in my early years of marriage. But what I've developed along the way was an abundance mindset, and now I cannot help but see opportunity. I mean, I've helped my kids start businesses. It's like I see every problem that comes up in my life as an opportunity for a business. So that's in some ways a challenge, because you've got to at some point, say no to some things. But I gave you the golf club example. Another example, 2014, I ran my first marathon. And in the training for that, I kind of went from nothing to trying to run. I got shin splints. And so if you're not familiar with shin splints, it's really bad pain on the front of your legs if you run when you're chubby, and shouldn't be running long distances. And so I used YouTube, and I basically put together a couple different remedies, and with icing and stretching and foam rolling, and it's like I got rid of them pretty quick. And so I made a video because I was just like wanting to make a video, try out YouTube, and it kind of went viral. And it was like on how to fix your shin splints and with a 5-minute treatment. And I started getting people ask me, like, where'd you get this stuff for this? And how much does this cost or that cost? And one in leaks to Amazon to buy, whatever. So I ended up basically creating a shin splints treatment kit is what I called it. And I put a little pamphlet in there with basically stills from the video showing step-by-step what to do. I included the foam roller, the rubber bands, I used a golf ball underneath my foot as part of the treatment. And so I just put it all in a box, sold it, and I was making a couple bucks, but then I realized I could go wholesale this stuff. So then I bought a big box of foam rollers, and I found that, the bulk bands, and we would cut them up and put them in there. And it became a nice little business. And I didn't do any marketing. That site actually still exists. I've taken down the kit because I just didn't want to deal with fulfillment, but I still sell like the $5 ebook version of it. But it was literally my pain. I figured out a way that worked for me to fix that pain. I had a friend locally who wanted some help because he was running too, and I was, at that point I had this mindset of, well, it's me and my friend. I'm sure there's other people that get shin splints, and I can help them with this thing. Yeah. And it would be a very viable business still to this day. And I just, I've moved on with different interests, but that's the mindset. It's like something as mundane as, man, my shins hurt, can turn into a treatment kit that you're sending people. You got to be careful with what you call it and medical claims and that kind of stuff. But pretty simple, idea.
What kind of businesses have you created with your kids?
So this summer, my oldest and youngest, my middle wanted no part of it. They decided to do a trash.
He's the outcast.
Yeah, well, it was a dirty job, and she wasn't into that. She's the artist, so she's actually starting a calligraphy, like a hand lettering business right now that she wants to do for invitations and things like that. But this summer, no, they spent some time putting together a flyer and came up with this idea of cleaning people's trash cans. In our neighborhood, we all have the same trash cans. You get a trash and recycling, and it's on the same cycle. And so they started off. I just posted it in the Facebook group, but they did all the work. They put the flyer together. They came up. I helped them, but they came up with the pricing, and had a great response from the initial Facebook post. So then I was like, well, now you need a physical flyer for the people who aren't on Facebook. And so they did half the neighborhood with flyers, got a bunch of business, did the second half with flyers, got a bunch of business. And they basically spent like 3 weeks this summer and made, it was almost $1,000 between them. Not a lot of work. I mean, you do need rubber gloves, and they're scrubbing with, vinegar and soap on people's trash cans. It wasn't the most glamorous, but they averaged, we added it up, they each earned about $35 an hour.
Wow.
For a 10-year-old and a 15-year-old. So that was really cool.
Nice.
Yeah, so that was the most recent one, but they're always coming up with something.
Excellent. Well, good for you with putting those traits into your kids young. They'll certainly pay dividends for it for years to come. So let's talk about Fire Creek Snacks.
Sure.
So, being in the consumable market is more unique and it's become easier, I would say, over the last few years, but it's unique because when people eat food, it's different than purchasing clothes or buying games and things like that. Tell us a little bit about how you guys created Fire Creek Snacks, and what do you consider when going to the market with probably a big expense and a big investment in a company like this?
Yeah, it was a very different experience for me. I'd sold digital products online. Like I said, I'd done coaching, sold books, but selling e-commerce, first of all, and especially a consumer packaged good, something that deals with food and the USDA and all that kind of stuff, it was very different. So in this case, it was seeing an opportunity in a very physical and different way. My wife and I were literally shopping at a local butcher shop that had opened up in our town, and I saw these snack sticks and some jerky that said Fire Creek. So I liked the brand. I thought it was cool. I'm wearing it now. It's a cool logo. Didn't know anything about it. Assumed it was just some corporate brand. And so I bit into it. I was like, wow, this is awesome. This is very different. It's like smoky and good texture. And I'm kind of a keto, low carb guy. And so I was like, this is great. So I thought, well, maybe I'll go buy some online next time. And I flip over the package and I see it's made in Jerseyville, Illinois, which ironically is my hometown. And it's not where I'm at now. It's about an hour away. It's like a 7,000 person farm town. I'm like, how in the world are these made in Jerseyville? And then I realized that the meat shop that had opened up in town their home office was in Jerseyville. So I put two and two together and said, they're making this stuff, but it's a different brand. And so through a friend of a friend, I got an introduction to the owner. His name is Ryan Hansen. It turned out he was about my age. He's the third generation owner of this family business. That was their third location. And so we kind of hit it off, and he needed some help marketing the new location. And again, this is kind of how a lot of my relationships develop. And I said, well, I do marketing. I'd love to help you. And so I was initially just working on brick and mortar advertising, some local Facebook ads, helping them with promotions and coming up with bundles and things like that. And, when the time was right, I said, well, what about this Fire Creek brand? What are you doing with that? And he was right in the transition. This is 2018. So keep in mind, I have left engineering. I'm like 3 or 4 months into self-employment. I'm like, awesome. I got another client. This is great. That's all I was seeing it for. So about the middle of that year, he's opening up to me and saying, I had this partnership. I launched this jerky brand, and it just kind of fizzled, and we didn't get a lot of traction. He's like, but I know it'll work much better as a snack stick, use the same flavors. And so he had started experimenting with that. But the previous group wasn't really interested. And I said, hey man, I would love to help you with this. Like I can build websites, we can do whatever. And that's really where it kicked off. It was very much me trying to give him a win first. So I said, right, I'll build the website for free. You can pay me like 5% of the online sales, and we'll kind of take it from there. And that's exactly what we did. So we, by September, we had a website. It's on Shopify now. And September 2018, things kind of took off. The online sales were decent, and then we started hitting the trade show circuit. And so in January 2019, Ryan and I went down to Orlando and went to the PGA merchandise show, which is golf merchandise. And we thought golf might be a good market for us. And we had never been to a trade show. So at the time, it was purely his business. So he plopped down the big investment to go down there and buy a trade show booth. And we just sold like crazy for 3 days to golf pros as they were walking by the booth, just sampling and taking credit cards. And it was like the non-traditional, we didn't know what we were doing. We didn't know how about purchase orders and all that stuff. We were just taking credit cards with Stripe and selling. So we got into like 200 golf courses. And so 2019, we kind of went down that path. We ended up going to a dozen trade shows. We learned that we don't need to both go, so we didn't kill ourselves and make our families hate us. But we split them up and found some cool niches. We're in a lot of independent hardware stores now. Golf's been really good. And so we kind of got into that wholesale mindset last year. And then this year, for lots of reasons, intention and COVID, it's been much more online, and which is really my passion. Right. It's been much more direct to consumer driven now. And you mentioned, in about 18 months total since inception, we were hitting that $1 million mark, which has been pretty awesome.
Yeah, it's super interesting how it's very similar to even my experience as an entrepreneur, being able to do work for free to show value as an investment, because time is ultimately our biggest asset. And while we can, go out there and, put ourselves on like Upwork or freelance.com to find these minimal amount of projects to build up our freelance business, you're probably better off focusing on providing more value to and networking with like-minded people in your vicinity, definitely in your local area, but even across the internet. I know when I was first starting out in web design and marketing, in order to reach more people, I did free work for some of the biggest influencers at the time. And that established that I was able to produce, and that ultimately put me in a position of success when the time comes for them to refer me work. So if you are thinking about being an entrepreneur, or you're not getting the runway you want, maybe it's time for you to do a little bit of free work out there to prove your value, so that way you can show you that it's a bigger investment overall in the long run.
Yeah, and this worked out great because he was paying me for the brick and mortar work already. Right. And I was like, look, I can do this pretty quick. It's fairly simple. We have only a small number of SKUs, and we can make this work. And it's exactly that. I tell people all the time. I was talking to a college student earlier today, just kind of mentoring him a little bit. He's a senior engineering and interested in entrepreneurship. And I said, always lead giving someone else a win. If you serve first. And I know that's kind of cliche, but this is the example of it, right? I said, Ryan, I know you've been through a lot with this partnership. You haven't had a lot of success the last couple of years. I think this thing's going to be great online. It's like the single best protein product I'd ever had in my life, and I eat a lot of meat. I said, and he knew. I mean, he's the product guy. He's a product genius, so he knew it was a great product. We had no idea how to get it online. He's third generation brick and mortar guy, and he knew wholesale a little bit, but he didn't know online. So I said, let me just try it. You got nothing to lose. And then he saw that it was good, and then he saw we had just a great symbiotic kind of relationship at trade shows. I'm more introverted but analytical. He's very extroverted, and he'll carnival bark, all day at a trade show aisle. And so and then it was just like, give me 5%. It's not much. I know it's not compensating for my time, but it gives me an incentive. And he was kind of feeling guilty. I think I was working for free. But then so then by spring of last year, our relationship had grown. We had the trust. We had the early success to know that there was something here worth pursuing, and I became a partner in it. So now Ryan and I'm a minority partner, but we're business partners now. And I really feel like that's the best way to do it, is to you gotta for a partnership, especially it's almost like a marriage, right? You have to have some courting. You have to fill out, make sure you have common goals, common personalities. We are both family guys, and the things that drive us is really success for our families. And so that was important that we had that, but we also had different skill sets to kind of bring to the table that would work well together to grow the brand. Yeah,
and to bring up the marriage, and you are essentially, I would say an expert with engagedmarriage.com.
Yeah.
Give us your perspective on being married and being entrepreneurs in business, because on one aspect you can have not any support, and on another aspect you can just be all over the place and not have your stuff in order, and you're trying to make ends meet, have a great relationship with your wife, organize your kids, and deal with a pandemic all at the same time. A lot of pressure in this world.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's and I've been on both sides of that coin. I mean, early in our marriage, we're high school sweethearts, and we kind of took things for granted. Like, we're good. We're meant to be together. But we didn't know how to communicate. We hadn't really worked on the skills, So, so prior, kind of about the time, engaged marriage came about was kind of the darkest time in our marriage. And that's part of what I wanted to talk about, was like, we got through some of these bad things, and that's when we had all the debt and we weren't communicating well. And it's like, but we were on the other side of it. We started going to marriage retreats, and we kind of started investing in our marriage and putting time into it, and realizing that, most of these things that affect your relationship are skills, and you can get better at them if you don't just take them for granted. I think that's one thing we talk a lot about with engaged marriage. It's our society, our culture kind of makes it sound like, well, you can fall out of love, or you just, the reason you're having a bad, intimate life is, because you've grown apart or whatever. No, you grow apart because you're not investing in being engaged in your marriage and your behaviors. So anyway, around entrepreneurship though, same thing. Ironically, writing for engaged marriage. I was spending so much time doing that early on. I was writing, 3 posts a week, pretty meaty posts, doing research. I was interviewing people and just trying to get into online business as a big thing while working a very stressful job, at that time. And, my wife came to me on more than one occasion. I'm in the office hammering away at midnight. It's like, we haven't even seen each other today. You're writing, telling other people how to have a good marriage, and, we don't have any quality time together. And then we started learning about, the love languages, and I realized hers is quality time. And so even if it's just sitting by her on the couch, that's really important to her. Yeah. And mine's words of affirmation. So she learned over time that, if you really want to hurt me, tell me that you're not proud of me and that what I'm doing is bad, because that's, that guts me out. So I think for people that are married, and so I would say I had a very reluctant spouse early on. She was like, she didn't see the big picture. Why are you spending all your time on this? You're not, we have young kids. You're not spending time with me. You already work too much. Why another project? Right. And she might still say that to a little extent, because I always have a lot going on, because I like to stay busy, obviously. But the turning point for us was a really open conversation, and it was preceded. I talked about she stayed home for 8 years. She now is a special ed teacher. She chose to go back just before COVID, but that was by choice, which doesn't have to now, But we were actually at a marriage retreat, and we were talking about kind of our dream day. If we had a dream day in your marriage, what would it look like? Where would you go? Who would you be around? How would you spend your day? And she was crying and trying to tell me, read this letter to me, because we went away separately and then we came together and we had to read them to each other. And she shared, well, in an ideal world, I would be home with our kids. We talked about that when we were, engaged, but now, she was working on her master's. She was, and we can't afford it. And so she kind of quickly said the reasons she really couldn't do it. Well, I had already written my letter, and I started reading it, and I said, in our ideal world, you would be home with kids, but you're really engaged at work. You're great at what you do. You have lots of friends there. I would never expect you to give up your career. So lo and behold, we actually had the same goal. We just never talked about it. It didn't really come up. And if it would have, I think we were both a little scared. But we were put in this environment where we had our barriers broken down. And well, now it became this huge mutual goal. So, that's when now we got to get out of debt as quick as we can. Now we got to figure out side hustles. She was working alongside me with engaged marriage, because we had a goal. We had a why. There was an outcome that we were both seeking. And so she's become way more understanding of my entrepreneurial needs, but I've also been a lot better about how I handle my time. You do a lot more things earlier in the morning when it's not impacting her. I always go to bed at the same time. It's whereas I used to stay up and work all night. So we've both found our groove, I guess, but it's taken 19 years of marriage to get to the most healthy balance. I think we're at the best spot we've been right now. And not having an engineering career and the stress and the travel and the things that came with that has really been helpful too the last 2.5 years. And I think that along with our kids getting older is why she felt compelled to go back and get back into teaching.
Yeah, I think anything that we want to improve or value in our life takes work, right? Whether it's a business or relationships, our family or our kids, our friendships, all of that stuff is going to take sacrifice and work. We have to kind of pick and choose how we do it. Thank you for that. We actually met inside of the Shopify Facebook group for the unofficial Shopify podcast. And I see that you're also providing advice and ideas on how things have worked for you to other entrepreneurs. And obviously that's in your personality. So what advice do you have for entrepreneurs who are working in an engineering career or finance, or maybe they're attorneys, and they're thinking about the next 5 years? How could they plan to build a business on the side? Maybe they have a couple failures here and there, but what advice would you give them to get them on the right path for success?
Yeah, I think the number one place to start, which I think all of us tend to skip over it, and we want to get real tactical, and we want to figure out what the business is and how much money it's going to make us, is to really start with why. I know it's, again, maybe it's cliche, but understanding why you want to leave your 9-to-5 now and why you want to become self-employed in the example that you gave is super critical, right? And you got to dig under the levels of peel back the onion. It's because initially most of us would be like, oh, I want freedom. I want more time with my family, and those are all good. But what's the real motivation? Because I think what a lot of people do is they're stressed, they're kind of burned out. They just want to get away from what they're doing And so they're going to jump to whatever comes up in front of them. Whereas if you know why you want to make this big lifestyle change and you're actually jumping to something that you know you're going to enjoy more, it just makes the whole process easier. It's more, it's the abundance mindset, right? Like if you're doing something out of fear, you're never going to get as good a result as if you're doing something because you're motivated to get to something better, something that you're pursuing. Right. So I think it starts with that. If you're married, obviously having those open conversations that we were talking about before. And then practically, because that's one of the main things, you talked about, I do marketing, consulting, and coaching in Fire Creek. One of my big passions, though, is actually coaching people in this I usually focus with engineers or like accountants or IT people. So people who kind of have been through that education, that they think in systems, and help them develop a plan to go from their 9 to 5 to self-employment. That's, and so just a brief, bit about that from a practical standpoint. I mean, I would start with nailing down exactly like your minimum viable income. So exactly what do you need? What could you cut back? What else are you spending money on? What could you do, say, for a year? And what would it really take to get by? And then you obviously need something that you're going to be developing on the side. And if they're listening to this podcast, I'd say there's a good chance they've already got something going, or that they've got the wheels turning there. And then frankly, you just have to work really hard for about, for my case, it was about 6 months where I had things percolating. I had stuff that was generating some extra money. I was still performing and doing my day job. And then you just have to work really hard for maybe 6 months and doing both. Right. Get that income, get enough of a cushion there. And I'm quite conservative, financially. My wife is very, very risk averse. So she married the wrong guy maybe, but, so we needed to have like a nice savings, so that if I left my job and I knew I was going to get a vacation payout, so I had all these factors. We had to figure out insurance because she didn't work at that time. So there's these real practical concerns. How do I do this without going bankrupt? But you build up that war chest. You get prepped. You set the time, the date, as you start getting more focused and you understand how close you are to that goal. And then. Yeah, and then I had it to where I could basically get zero income, for at least 3 months, and we'd still be okay. But I already knew that wasn't real, because as I got, it's kind of like as I'm getting closer and closer to leaving the engineering job, I'm ramping up. I'm picking up new clients. I'm getting, Fire Creek sales are increasing. Right. Well, not Fire Creek in my case, but because that was after I left, but my other ventures, engaged marriage, were increasing. It was primarily the coaching and client work, but like one's climbing while the other one's just steady. And then when you kind of want to make that leap, you've got all the confidence because you've still got your side stuff coming in, and now you've got this little war chest, and then you can kind of go into it more easily. And so that's practically everyone's a little different, and that's why I really like to go with people one-on-one, start with their why, and then figure out where they're at now, what they're trying to get to, and build that step-by-step plan so they can kind of check the boxes and figure out, the practicalities of things like insurance. I bring up insurance because it's when people are leaving a 9 to 5 and going self-employed, that's one of the biggest things I hear is like, well, I'm scared to death I'm going to lose my insurance, unless their spouse has that coverage. But yeah, and so for me, it was the security of being able to build up the stuff on the side, and then again, a kind of a new level up on my mindset. I know before we got on, we were talking about a video I put out there that basically no decisions are permanent, with a few exceptions. Hopefully your marriage, having children, those sort of things. But in general, business, life, career decisions are not permanent. And that was really what triggered me in 2017, about the middle of 17. I was getting client work and doing marketing for other people. And one day I was like, what am I so afraid of? And I realized what I was afraid of is I thought if I told my engineering company that I was leaving, that I could never do engineering again, or I would lose my identity. I'd done this for 18 years. I was teaching at a university. I had a master's degree. It just seemed so crazy to throw that away. But then I realized that if I go and I be self-employed and I work from home for 6 months and I hate it, I can just go be an engineer again. Right? I'm good at my job. It's not like I'm leaving because I'm getting, disbarred from the profession. I could just go do it. It's not a permanent decision. Yeah. And and that also helped my wife a lot, because I was like, let's just try this. And if I don't like it, I can just go back and get a 9 to 5. I'll probably make more because I'll probably switch companies in the process, And so, so that's my encouragement for people is, the fear holds you back. There's legitimate things to be concerned about, but you can prep for them, and you can overcome them. And you just need to shine the light on them, because a lot of people, myself included at that time, you feel uncertain, but you never take the time to really unpack what it is, So having someone, especially that's been through it, to like guide you through and help answer questions that you maybe didn't realize you had, but eventually it kind of clicks that, oh yeah, that's what's holding me back. And that could be a little different for everybody.
Yeah. It's definitely easy for entrepreneurs to have shiny object syndrome and not get out of their thoughts or make things more complicated than they need to themselves. So having a mastermind group or accountability partners really helps you think differently and outside the box, because you can't get feedback from yourself. You got to get feedback from other people around you. Do you have any books or tools that you might want to recommend for practical next steps?
Sure. I think book-wise, probably my number one recommendation for entrepreneurs, or really for anyone, is Atomic Habits by James Clear. I'm sure you're familiar with it, but what I like about that, I'm a big, when you take the assessments and all that, I'm always the achiever. Like, I like to achieve goals. Yeah. And what he helps me with in that book is it's not about the goal, it's about the daily progress that you're making. It's very much the theme of your podcast, right? I think he even has a quote that's something along the lines of, happiness comes from making good progress on a worthy goal, or something like that. But the other quote I had pulled up here is, habits are the compound interest of self-improvement. And that's it. For me, that's like, if you want to get your life better, it's what you do every day. It's, it's every little thing you do is a vote for the outcomes the big outcomes that you want to have. And being an idea guy, seeing an opportunity everywhere, it's really easy, as you just said, to get distracted. And so I've got kind of foundational habits that I do every day. They keep me grounded, give me progress. And then the other thing I would say is it's not a tool in the sense of software or anything, but it's something I've adopted this year for specific to Fire Creek and growing the business, is to always be looking for partnerships, always be looking for giving people wins. You and I met in a Facebook group because you saw me, I was visible in some way because I was trying to help people, sharing some experience I had with Fire Creek. I've had numerous people reach out from that Facebook group and other things, so a partnership can take many different forms. A simple one would be a podcast, right? Like, you have a guest on, they provide value to your audience. Totally. Well, now they have exposure to your audience. That's a total win-win. Like, you and I'm not giving up anything to be here other than some time. You're not giving up anything other than your time. And now hopefully, I'm providing value to the audience, and the audience might go buy some snack sticks or reach out if they have career change questions. So that's, but the practical application of that is every week I make sure I'm trying to facilitate a new partnership.
Totally.
That could be a very tactical, hey, you're in the barbecue niche, I want to send this lead magnet to your list and I'll send yours to mine. Like, that's a partnership. But it could also be a podcast interview. It could be asking for someone to do a review on YouTube of your product. And these once it's like I said about seeing business opportunity, once you are looking through that lens, you see it everywhere. Yeah. So
makes sense. Let's tell people how they can find out more about you.
Absolutely. And we've mentioned a couple businesses: engagemarriage.com, firecreeksnacks.com, engagedigitalsolutions.com, which is a real mouthful. But I'm very open and open book, transparent. I'd love to chat with anyone who wants to chat. So email is really, direct way. I'll respond to your email definitely, and would love to hook up with anyone who has similar interest or has questions from the podcast. And my email is Dustin, DUSTIN, @firecreeksnacks.com.
To close out, what would be one piece of advice based on your history that you would have done differently starting over today?
Boy, I think the piece of advice would be kind of what I mentioned earlier, the no permanent decisions mindset. The fact that it's not only okay, but it's like highly encouraged to go try different things, take small bets. That's the encouragement I was given to the young man earlier. He has interest in real estate investing, and he's like telling me these 5 things that he's thinking about. And I'm like, well, pick one and try it, because if it doesn't work out, just sell it. And you're probably not going to be out anything, and you'll have this new experience, and you're going to meet new people in the process. And so, yeah, I think it's having that abundance mindset and keep reminding yourself that, these aren't permanent decisions, as long as you don't go too crazy and over leverage yourself in some way.
Perfect. Thanks for your time, Dustin.
Absolutely. Thanks, Alex.
Thank you for making happy progress part of your day. How are you going to take advantage every day? Please let Alex know by visiting the website happyprogress.com. Together we will prove that progress equals happiness.